So I think the difference between emotions and behavior, it doesn't mean you have to force yourself to feel good. And I think there's ways to communicate about our emotions that don't put the blame on others. I think that's a really important nuance, because when we kind of own our emotional realities, we can be like, hey, yeah, I'm feeling jealous right now. I'm feeling sad. I'm feeling grief. I'm feeling some, other challenging emotions. But it's not your fault. It's not yours to necessarily feel like you are responsible for them or that you did something wrong. I'm going to take care of them, and I'm going to act in a way that feels congruent with my value alignment.
Welcome to Normalizing Non-Monogamy, the podcast where we interview incredible people from all over the world to hear their personal journeys of self-discovery through the lenses of love, sex, and relationships.
Our mission is to show people that they're not alone and to inspire them to embrace their true selves so that together we can open minds and live authentically without shame.
We believe everyone's story is powerful and beautiful, yet it's important to remember that everyone does life a little bit differently and that the views and opinions expressed by our guests do not necessarily reflect our own.
Additionally, we aren't doctors. Please consult a medical professional for anything regarding your health that you might learn about on the show. Enjoy!
Hi, welcome to Ask Us Anything. I'm Meshai, and this is Fin. We are also joined today with Marie Tuin, who's going to be working with us around the subject of compersion. We like to gather our questions from the community and sit down and kind of process through them, because normally the stuff you're working through is also the stuff that we're working through. I guess a little bit about me. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist. I am also primarily in this space as a coach, and I have certifications in sex therapy and trauma therapy. What about you, Fin?
I have no such certifications or anything. I have a lot of history of doing and exploring non-monogamy in my partnership with Emma, as well as interviewing over 350 people. Well, 350 stories, probably over 500 people total we've talked to, and have been navigating non-monogamy myself for about 15, 17 years, somewhere in there, depending on how you count. And excited to be here today. And of course, we're joined by the lovely Marie, friend of ours, close friend of Emma and I's out here in the Bay Area. And we do lots of work together, and we get to talk about compersion with the compersion expert. Welcome, Marie.
Thank you so much. It's so good to be here.
Yeah. Do you want to maybe introduce yourself? What makes you qualified to talk about compersion? Does anything make you qualified at all?
I feel like no one is fully qualified, so it takes a village, right?
Perfect.
And the kind of knowledge or part that I hold is a lot of my academic background and research has been about compersion. I did my PhD studies in, between 2014 and 2021, and I created one of the first compersion studies to really look at what promotes compersion and what hinders compersion. And then after that, I proceeded to write a book based on that study and adding some more. So interviewing people who have experienced the gamut of it and distilling that into a congruent theory, which is very exciting because the book just came out last month and I'm excited to talk about it.
Yeah, it's an amazing book. We got our copy finally, and I'm super excited to dig into it today. And maybe the best place to start, actually, the first thing I'll say is links to all of Marie's work and Meshai's work will be in the show notes, so you don't have to try to hunt either of these people down. But maybe the first place to start would be just a quick definition of what is compersion for anybody who doesn't know.
So overall, kind of like my overall definition is that compersion is our wholehearted participation in the joy of others. But me and my colleague, Dr. Sharon Flicker, last year actually published the first encyclopedia definition of compersion in an encyclopedia of sexual behavior and psychology. And we decided to split it in three because what we discovered through research is that compersion can be defined in so many different ways. So what we generally think about compersion in non-monogamy is sharing the joy of our partner when they're having a great experience with someone else, romantically or intimately. So the first definition refers to that. It is the range of positive emotions that we might experience in relations to our intimate partner's other intimate connections. But then something really important that we discovered is that it can also be cognitive and attitudinal. So we added a second definition in the realm of non-monogamy, saying that compersion is the broad range of thoughts, attitudes, and behaviors that we might experience in relation to our partner's other positive intimate connections. And then, because people are starting to use the word compersion in broader contexts, we added a third definition, which is the range of positive emotions, attitudes, behaviors, and thoughts we might experience in relations to someone else's gratifying experience in any context. So that's the long form definition of compersion.
No, it's perfect. And so that'll show up, right? I love that it's been expanded beyond just, the like intimate partnerships, right? Because it could be your best friend, whatever, gets a huge raise at work. And instead of you being like, well, I should get a raise, why am I not getting paid more? It's, hey, I'm super stoked for your raise. Like, that's amazing. I can't wait. Like being there in the joy with them rather than maybe like competition or jealous, or you're making so much money now, you're going to leave me. You're not going to be my friend anymore. Right. That kind of version or mentality.
Exactly. Yeah. And sometimes I'll just say there can be very valid reasons not to experience compersion. I just want to put that out there before we dive in. Sometimes it's not easy or not even really what the context is calling for. So I'm sure we'll get into that more.
Totally.
I also like that you stated that like there's a cognitive piece of this that's like thought, attitude, and behavior, because I think so many people look at compersion and go, I'm not like enthusiastically happy for my partner. And so I obviously don't have compersion. And this umbrella now, I think, like goes over lots of other people, because you might not have that ecstatic enthusiasm, but you can have the thoughts and the attitudes and the behaviors. And then by that definition, you fit. It's such an inclusive space. I love it.
Yeah. And it's so helpful. It's so helpful when we're trying to normalize, being in non-monogamous spaces without having this, boisterous joy. And, we can still have an attitude of compersion, an orientation or an ethic of compersion, even when we're not feeling the emotion of compersion.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know we'll probably talk about this. Well, we're going to get into the first question here in a second, but even just in that one, I'm curious, like the balance between hiding and trying to like cover up your emotions to just like power through versus, still feeling like, okay, I'm maybe not quote unquote feeling all of the compersion, but I can show up and tell my partner, hey, I'm struggling, but I hope you have a fantastic date and I look forward to coming back together tonight. Like, how do you balance being authentic with your emotions and still showing something that maybe you're not quite feeling completely?
Well, I mean, it's really an art. It's a little bit like, let's say you have a really strong work ethic and you're going to show up every day at work and do your best and show up on time as much as possible and whatever a work ethic means to you. You're going to do it kind of, even when you're not feeling that great about it. So I think the difference between emotions and behavior, like it doesn't mean you have to force yourself to feel good. And I think there's ways to communicate about our emotions that don't put the blame on others. I think that's a really important nuance, because when we kind of own our emotional realities, we can be like, hey, yeah, I'm feeling jealous right now. I'm feeling sad. I'm feeling grief. I'm feeling some, other challenging emotions, but it's not your fault. It's not yours to necessarily like feel like you are responsible for them or that you did something wrong. I'm going to take care of them and I'm going to act in a way that feels congruent with my value alignment.
Yeah.
But also we have to honor our emotions, otherwise they come back to bite us.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is, I think, the piece that I want to maybe, I don't know if it's a disclaimer, but upfront kind of communicating that, right? What we're not getting at here is maybe your partner wants to open up and this is a hypothetical. Your partner wants to open up. You're like freaking out. You can't do it. But Marie and everybody here told you just go and fake it until maybe you start feeling it. But like, you're pushing yourself so far outside of what you can actually do, like that's going to catch up with you, right? Like you can't necessarily fake it that hard, hoping that you'll make it, right? Like you still need to do things to like figure out the security and cultivate security in your partnership, right? It's not just go to bed every night crying and then wake up and put a smile on. Like that isn't necessarily what you're getting at with that.
Absolutely. I will also add, like emotions contain information. So, like if we don't just treat them as like, oh, there's just an obstacle on my road to bliss, like, and I just need to, kind of grind my teeth through this, but actually ask those parts of you, like, what are you here to tell me? Like, what is the concern? Like maybe there's a lot that you can learn and grow with actually by investigating those patterns, and it can be a whole growth path,
Yeah.
And maybe Meshai can talk more about that also as a therapist.
I don't know. I was kind of thinking like the growth process of all that is kind of like, okay, personally, I've definitely been like, I'm not necessarily a compersion person, but I find that when you kind of sit in like gratitude, it makes it easier. So I love the fact that you talked about standing in your values, because sometimes it's easier to be in a space of like, I'm going to stand in my values, and how do I want my partner to feel when they leave this space or when they go hang out with another person. And that makes it easier for me to get there instead of trying to figure out like, where's the joy? So maybe the joy will come. Sometimes it doesn't, but I'm really grateful that you're happy.
Yeah. I love that.
I love it. Well, we could sit and wax philosophically, but maybe we take on the first question.
Yeah.
So compersion does not actually come very naturally to me. It has been something I've struggled with since opening my relationship with my husband. I've put in a ton of work and effort to actually feel compersion. And I know I've made a ton of progress, and I actually do feel excited for him now when he goes on dates. And for context, we've been open for about 5 years, but together for around 20. So it took, a solid 2 to 3 years for me to start feeling compersion and happiness and joy for him when he was out doing his own things. But now I am in a relationship that is coming up on a year at this point, and I am struggling with feeling compersion for my other partner. And I guess my question for you is, are there any shortcuts? Does this get easier? Or do I just have to do all of the work all over again? And I know the answers to these, at least I think I do. But any advice or practical knowledge or resources would be welcome in this situation, because my other partner deserves all the happiness in the world, and I would like to also be happy for him when he gets it.
All right. So, I mean, I would just say like the end, like the last little bit of that question was like, to me, like a great example of the attitudinal compersion. Like my partner deserves all of the joy, and like I want to cultivate that. So I just thought that was maybe an important place to start, was recognizing that.
Absolutely. And, in the framework that I developed for what promotes compersion and what hinders compersion, part of that is cultivating that attitudinal orientation and actually having a commitment to non-monogamous values and being on board, like being in a state of self-consent with oneself in one's relationships. And it sounds like the caller really has that down. Like I feel like they're communicating that this is something that has been accomplished with, her husband, and now, like their mind is in the right place. So I would look at other possible bottlenecks, because I think every context, every relational context has potential bottlenecks to compersion. And that's how I also like to approach it. I also have a coaching practice with clients, and when someone comes, I look at what is the context, what might be promoting compersion, what is a bottleneck to it. So sometimes it looks different from partner to partner with different metamors as well. So things I would ask is, are there ways that you might be able to create more security with that partner with whom you're struggling to experience compersion? What is your communication like around their other relationships? Are there ways that you can feel like you can fill your own plate more abundantly so that it's easier to experience compersion? And what is your perception or your rapport with your metamor in that particular context? Is there ways that you can learn about that metamor a little bit more, maybe even meet them, or just feel like they're not, someone who's totally separate from you or an enemy, or just how do you create a positive rapport with this metamor, or at least a positive perception, so that you can feel like potentially you're all on the same team?
Yeah.
I love that. Like, yeah, I agree. I think she definitely had an amazing attitude about this. It's like, I can see that. I just need to reach that branch, but I don't know how to get there. And so the thing I think about first, and I've probably said this before in some other recordings we've had, is how ethical non-monogamy is inherently an insecure attachment style. And so like, as you go into it with other people, like this, your partner, like original partner, you have a relationship equity and that relationship that you probably don't have with the new person. And so you are kind of using a springboard that's probably a little smaller than the one that you had before. So giving yourself grace in this is like really important. Also recognizing, like you said, I think that was brilliant, that like the circumstances for creating a space of compersion with this person is going to look different than with your other partner, and then trying to figure out how to create security with that person will also look different. So it's a little bit of a gymnastics routine you're running through. But you do have evidence that you've done it before. And so knowing that there's evidence and history behind that is really great fuel for doing it again.
Yeah. There's probably going to be less battles to fight with this particular context, because at least you've already done the hard work of kind of shifting from monogamy to non-monogamy, and that, you don't have to really do that twice. So,
right.
Yeah.
I'm curious, Marie, in your research, did you find a link, or what type of link did you find between relational security and compersion, right? Like, is there a tie between those in any way?
Very big. Yeah, absolutely. The more secure you feel in your relationship, the easier it's going to be to experience compersion for your partner.
Yeah.
And, security can be cultivated in many different ways. It can be adding strategies of reassurance. It can be, creating more of a sense of saturation of love and time and resources. There's things you can't always control, but, like the more resourced you feel in your relationship, the easier it is going to be to feel like, oh, there's enough for other people too to come to this table.
Yeah, totally. Well, and I think probably I think about it for myself, like an easier time if I'm feeling secure. I think there's also the security within myself, right? Like, am I feeling good about my life, right? Am I doing the things I want, living the life I want? It's much easier for me than when my friend, again, like taking it out of non-monogamy, like if I'm feeling good about my job and life and my friend gets a huge raise, there's much more likely that I'm going to be like, oh, that's amazing, versus like, God, I hate my fucking job. I hate my life. It's not fair that you got this, right? So we like kick into comparison versus like compersion when I think we're not in alignment with ourselves.
Yep.
And I think the piece about relational security, tying together maybe a little bit of what you both shared, which I think is interesting, is this person has 20 years of, I'm going to say air quotes, security in their marriage, right? Because I think we often equate time with security. And now it's, how can I create security within like a 1-year relationship, without having to wait 19 more years and then doing 2 to 3 more years of work after that? Like, how do we start to create that without just looking to time to be the thing that creates our security for us?
Right. That is such a great point.
and not super easy to do necessarily, right? Like we now are, I think we can, I see it as an easy scapegoat to be like, well, of course our relationship's not like secure in itself because it's only a year old. And I think that's true in some ways, but also I think you can develop secure short-term connections.
Yeah, that's where like emotional intelligence comes in, and grace, and having lots of conversations. I'm always like, if you don't like splitting hairs, E&M might not be for you, because you have to like really get in there and have conversation after conversation after conversation. But that is kind of how you start to build relationship equity, is that you have the really hard conversations and you give each other the benefit of the doubt. And you do try to find joy for the other person, because inherently, whether or not it's non-monogamy or monogamy, like, you're two different people and you're going to see the world differently. So these conversations have to happen anyway.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think also just really resting into the uniqueness of that relationship. Because, like in monogamy, we can say that our relationship is unique because it's sexually exclusive.
Mm-hmm.
But in non-monogamy, if it's not sexually exclusive, then it's like it has to be unique. We have to see it as unique for other reasons, and to maybe even like voice that to each other. Like, here's why our relationship is unique and kind of irreducible or irreplaceable, or, just like why we really want this relationship. Like, here are the things that are really wonderful and specific to us, to our dynamic, and to kind of reiterate that to each other, I think can go a long way to creating a sense of security, even if the time spent isn't as long.
Yeah. 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 And I mean, maybe we jump to the next one here in a second. I just, maybe a final thought from my side on this is just the acknowledgement that, like, I think this is super common, right? We've had the experience, or I've personally had the experience of having security in a long-term partnership, forming a new one, and like the thought of that person, like, going out and dating, like, that was way scarier to me than, right? Because it was new. There wasn't all of the trust and the security built. And so I just want to make sure that, like, people know, like, this is super common, right? To get into a new partnership, and all of a sudden, even though you worked through all of your, you fixed jealousy, you fixed it all, and then you get into a new partnership and you're like, well, what the fuck? Like, I thought I took care of all this stuff, but like, it's totally different. Like, each partnership is its own unique ecosystem that, there could be so many different factors coming in that maybe don't even have anything to do with you necessarily.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Well said.
All right. On to question 2, which one of the fun things about the 3 questions we have today is they kind of build on each other in some ways. And so this one was written in, it was actually posted in our virtual community, which I just wanted to say, a lot of the questions we get are from our virtual community, which you can find out more on our website at normalizingnonmonogamy.com. Click on the community tab. But if you're out there listening and you're not part of our community, you can still send us an email or send us a voicemail and we will answer your question. So it's not just people who are in our virtual community. Okay. But these ones did come from there. So, all right. What are some specific recommendations for cultivating the feelings of compersion when struggling with it? Say, if you have a spouse who intellectually was fully on board with enthusiastically pursuing polyamory, but has found that this compersion piece, specifically matching the feelings and nervous system responses to the values and intellectual ideals held, is far more difficult to embrace. Does it just take time and practice, or are there specific coping mechanisms that can help? So this person is like intellectually there, or their partner is like, I'm in, I get it, probably read all the books, but then once it's time to do it, it's way fucking harder than the thought experiment of it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
It's like YouTube University. Like, you watch YouTube and you're like, I can do this. And then you like buy all the stuff and you're like,
yeah.
I think I bit off a little more than I could chew.
Yeah. Yep. Like learning to swim from watching YouTube, right? Like, oh, that looks easy.
That
all
looks
you
fine.
do is just move your arms like that. No problem.
Oh my God.
So
That's a good question.
Yeah, and it kind of builds on the last one, right? Like strategies for cultivating it. But I'm curious, Marie, what comes up for you in this question?
Well, I kind of want to plug my book, and also like I created this worksheet for people to actually like evaluate like how are they doing in terms of all of the factors that might promote or hinder compersion, so that they can actually identify what are the bottlenecks in that particular context. Because again, there's no universal formula that applies to everyone here.
Yeah.
This person who is struggling to experience compersion, like maybe could really use more community, which then I'll plug your community. Yes, it's, go to Emma and Fin's community, Normalizing Non-Monogamy. It can really make that journey easier if you have friends, if you have peers, if you have a community to lean on and get some support. Maybe that person is feeling insecure about herself, and that is where the bottleneck is, and where she could be filling her cup more intentionally and more kind of ferociously.
Right.
Maybe she could use more relational reassurance. Again, kind of coming back to the theme of security. So there's a lot of different things that could help. And, we can give a bunch of examples, but I would want to see like, where are the most effective places to kind of put more attention first that could help create more space for compersion. Yep. But all of that said, I would also say that time does help, because if you just open your relationship, then there is a habituation process that needs to happen for your nervous system, for your whole kind of worldview. Like, okay, I was monogamous, now I'm not. What does that mean about me? What does that mean about my partnerships? What does that mean about love? Does that mean that our security is threatened, et cetera, et cetera? And just, like the time to get used to this new paradigm will probably change things in and of itself.
Yeah. So the sort of a combination of, you can do things, but there's only so much you can speed it up, right? What the old saying, you can't take 9 women and make a baby in a month, right? Like you at a certain point, there's a certain amount of time that the people have to go through to, feel a little bit of that security. And that's different for everybody.
That's hilarious.
maybe not the best metaphor for this, but yeah.
Did you make that up, or did
No.
You're saying pregnancy would have been so much easier. Great.
I know. I'll be on that team. I could do.
Yeah. The one time it doesn't take a village. Yeah. I was curious, Marie, so you mentioned a worksheet. Is that worksheet available? Like, is it on your website? Is it at whatiscompersion.com?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, you can download it.
Yeah, I will make sure that link is in there, because I love that, being able to sort of find where is it for you that you should put the energy, right? Like maybe you've got like the world's most robust community, but there's something else, right? And so really thinking about where this is. And like you said, there's not a formula. It's not, okay, if you can get 6 I love yous, 3 dates in 4 hours a month, then you'll achieve compersion. Like it's not like a fixed thing that you just get.
Yeah. It's kind of like everyone has their own like sort of combination lock, and it's very contextual. And again, like you said earlier, like it's an ecosystem, and not all of it is about you or in your hands.
Yeah.
I also love that you said that it takes time, because I think sometimes we'll think, okay, maybe this is the second date that person's been on. I should be much better now. And it's like, no, like this is still a muscle I'm building. It's still going to hurt. I'm still going to feel sore in the morning. It does take a little bit of time. And so one of the things that I think is really difficult for people that they don't suspect is like how crazy their nervous system gets. Because if you have, considered this person or even the new person to be a prominent figure, whether that is like the acquisition of like extra time with that person, or your main source of like certain types of emotional or physical or financial resources, that sometimes feels like a threat on the very the front end. And when you sit down with it, it's other things, but in the front end, it feels like a threat. And so what are you doing to calm your nervous system so that as the time passes, it doesn't feel like a never ending, bear in the room that you're hiding from? So making sure that you're also having things to look forward to, and that you are engaging in things that help to regulate your nervous system. So if you feel like you're tired and sleepy, are you hanging out with people that make you feel good on the inside, like friends and family? If you feel like there's a bear in the room and you should be running, go work out, go do things that match your heart rate, because, the worst thing you can do is lie to your body or tell your body, why are you doing this? Calm down. You should be fine. Your body's like, no, you should be freaking out like I'm freaking out. And so you guys just need to freak out together until you guys can find a way to be like, oh, we survived this. It wasn't that bad. Oh, okay. We can try to do this again.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, I have coaching clients who do all kinds of different things to match kind of what they need. Like I have one client who, when her husband goes on a date, she orders sushi and drinks wine and watches her favorite show. And that's her way to communicate to herself, nothing bad is happening. I'm not under threat. And I actually get a treat. I get a special treat when he goes on a date.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a way to kind of retrain her nervous system to associate this event with something positive for herself, not just something disastrous. But then I have another client who, like you said, goes and works out and goes for a long run, when, his partner is on a date. And so everyone needs something a little different. And yeah, listening to your own body and intuition about that is really key.
Yeah, I love the example you gave about it being a treat. I was just trying to find the episode number, but I'm struggling. But it was Caitlin and Julian on our show somewhere in the mid 200s, I think. I'll put links in the show notes. But they're interesting, similar. When he started dating, she was really struggling with it, and she built up her routine and sort of took care of herself in a way that they got to a place where if he had a date planned and he canceled it, she was like, no, go get out of the house. I have an evening planned. You need to leave the house. I don't care where you go. If it's not a date, you're still leaving, because I'm planning to sit in the tub and watch shows and drink wine and have a date with myself. And now you adapt, right? And so I love that figure out the self-care for yourself and what it is that's going to work for you.
Yeah.
I would get in the middle of the bed and just spread eagle. I was I have all this room to myself. This is amazing. Maybe that's not everyone's cup of tea, but I love get out of the bed. I have the whole thing to myself. It's nice.
I don't have to share the covers. No.
It can be as cold or as hot as I want it to be. Yes. Treats. They're beautiful. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
All right, maybe jumping into the last one here. And again, of course, then I cut myself off because I had a thought on this one that we just did, which is I just wanted to maybe, again, sort of empathize with this or validate how hard it is to have one, your mindset be I want to do this. This is the thing this is what I believe in. These are even my ethics. And yet my body won't let me do it in a way that feels good. And the push pull conflict between those is really hard. Mm-hmm. And they're you're not a failure if you're not riding the compersion waves oh, it's just amazing all day every day. If you struggle when your partner goes out, if you struggle when your friend gets a raise, you're not doing it wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I love that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Okay. Number 3, another written in question. I'm going to read a little bit. It's a little bit long. I'm going to try to give enough context, but not get super long. So the little bit of context that's important up front is this person is in a 20 plus year relationship, and their partner is, they've just discussed, or they share that their partner is basically asexual. So not necessarily interested in sex. I'm really trying not to convince or influence my wife that she needs to do anything or has to feel anything other than what she wants to do or feel. At the same time, I want her to feel supported and safe and know that I'm not going down this path with any intention to abandon her or our 20+ year relationship. I want her to feel secure so that she might hopefully feel some level of joy when I tell her about how I've developed a new relationship with someone else or even potentially had an experience with somebody else. Should I be concerned about my asexual partner feeling compersion for me as I try to explore ethical non-monogamy? Or is it something that I should just let happen, hopefully, and basically try as best I can to cultivate? What can I do to promote open and comfortable communication about experiences that my partner maybe doesn't want to hear about, especially when I want to be open and honest about who I am and what I'm doing? This is a tricky situation to be in. I will just say that up front.
Mm.
This is a really good question. I think there's a lot of people who have this exact same question and kind of are working through like, how much do I tell a partner and how much do I not tell them?
Yeah. And how do I cultivate compersion in my partner? How do I make them feel compersion? Marie, how do we do that? Easy?
Well, I do get that question a lot. I mean, I do want to commend the question asker for, stating like, hey, I don't want to force my wife to make her feel what she doesn't want to feel or do what she doesn't want to do. So, just like kudos on that statement, because it's a trap when you're trying to really like convince someone to feel something because that would make you feel better.
Exactly.
That is not going to work.
Yeah. I would say I saw a bit of myself in this. That's something that I've learned in the last few years is so much of my like need to fix other people is because it's really hard for me to watch anybody else hurt. And especially if it's my partner, 20+ years in a partnership with somebody, you don't want them to hurt. You want them to be happy and feel joy. And so I totally get the like, how do I help her feel compersion so that she's not hurting when I'm trying to do things that I want to do, right? Like that's a tough place.
Totally. So, I think there is a great middle ground though that you can achieve between like not pushing compersion, not trying to convince, not trying to, like get them to feel it, but also creating a fertile terrain for it. Cultivating as much abundance, relational security, maybe like being really curious about, is there things, like even though your wife is asexual and maybe her interest is not in dating, are there things that she might want to do in her life that would make her life even richer, like fill her plate even more, like maybe taking extra interest in that while you're, benefiting from a richer life through non-monogamy. Maybe there's a balance that can happen through other things for her. And, like the fuller our plates are, the more likely we are to experience compersion.
Yeah.
So I would look at it from like a more holistic standpoint, not just non-monogamy.
Yeah.
So I would start there. Yeah.
Yeah. I think too on that, just to maybe, I don't know if anybody else's brain went there, but like what I think we don't want to do is then bring your partner a binder full of activities and be like, have you tried, skiing? Have you tried snowboarding? Have you tried this? Have you tried that? What about like, it's really more about talking with them. Again, this is where you can't fix their thing. Like it's about, hey, what are you interested in? How can I support you? What would support look like versus like, go find some hobbies, right? Like that's not the same.
Good point. Thank you so much for saying that and clarifying.
I love that. The mental image I got was like a basket of yarn. Like, do you want to knit?
Yeah.
Maybe.
Have you tried woodworking?
Yeah.
I thought that when I think about someone who is bringing in like asexuality to the table, especially in E&M, some of like, I don't know if this helps at all for your partner, but some of my strongest relationships have been with people that the relationship was basically asexual. And so I think it's really important that your partner isn't just thinking about how they can best support you or how the concept of E&M makes logical sense, they really do have to find their own personal why for this in order to even get to the compersion piece for you. And so I'm hoping that on a lot of levels, your partner doesn't see that E&M is just a you thing, that E&M can be for them, and that sex doesn't always have to exist within that relationship for there to be like a mutual why in E&M.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. Like in a way, kind of opening up the relationship kind of in a broader sense, like, and maybe both people are just kind of opening up their lives in a bigger way, and they're both in that why, and it can look different for each one of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And I hesitate to go down the road of like guessing and stuff, but I think I can see a world in which opening up a partnership that there's an asexual partner and maybe there's mismatched libidos, right? It doesn't even have to be asexuality, but mismatched libidos. And that is, in one sense, a really great tool and solution. But in another, I know it can create a lot of like shame in the partner who's maybe not living up to the standards that they're supposed to, right? And so I just maybe thinking about it might be a little harder for a partner who is asexual to be tapping into that compersion in that same way if there are feelings of they're only doing this because I'm not quote, able to, I don't want to, so they're going to do it. I wish I could, similar to what we talked about earlier, like maybe the disconnect between wanting, your ethics are in non-monogamy, but you struggle to develop the compersion. Maybe there's some similar pieces of that here, of like that, still that feeling of shame, like I should be a sexual person, I should be wanting this, and I don't, so they're going to get it somewhere else. That's a harder hurdle to clear, I think, to feel compersive in that moment. I mean, probably not for everybody, but I could see it being a challenge. I think it'd be a challenge for me.
Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah, totally. I also want to address the communication piece. Like how do you communicate with someone where you want to share a lot and they might not want to hear a lot?
Yeah.
And I think it's important to respect your partner's communication preferences if you want to, again, set up a fertile terrain for compersion to emerge. So I think maybe even having like a conversation about how much, she wants to hear and what feels good, what feels like not kind of concealing and, like communicating openly without like a sense of secrecy, but in a way that feels good. And maybe orienting those conversations towards the meaning of these other relationships for him rather than just like disclosing data. And that can help kind of build that relational muscle of like, oh yeah, we can talk about this in terms of just like sharing rather than telling. I think that can help just bring everyone on board emotionally a little bit more.
Yeah. Yeah. And I like, this is a hard piece, right? Because I hear this person so much wants to like be open and honest, right? They don't want to hide. Probably they don't want to hide what they're doing, but they also probably don't want to hide who they are. And how do you show up as that open, honest person? Yeah. When your partner's saying, I don't want to hear parts of you, and you're both like trying to take care of yourself and they're in opposition. And I mean, I love what you said, Marie. And I think part of this is being able to have that conversation too, to say, hey, I hear you. You don't want to hear that I went out on dates, or you don't want to hear this and this and this. And I don't want to rub your face in it, but also I don't want to hide who I am, and I don't want to be dishonest, right? If you ask me like, hey, how was your day? And I went and had an amazing date, I don't want to have to lie to you and say, oh, my day was fine, I didn't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, I don't want to have to lie to you. So is there a way that you two can find room to share or listen that works for both of you, right? Not that it's going to push either one of you so far out of your comfort zone that you can't do it, but that you can both get some of that need met.
Exactly. Yeah. It's quite an art.
Yes, it's a tricky dance, I think, and it will always be moving in my experience, right? Like, you think you got it, and then 2 weeks later you do it, and it's like, oh well, that didn't work anymore, and it's like, okay, well, how did it change already? Like, so I think having like the continual open communication about how to navigate this, because it's from week to week, we're changing, our partners are changing, everything is sort of always in flux, and keeping up with the changes can be hard when life's busy. And
Yep, absolutely.
Meshai, any feelings on this one?
I don't know. I think you guys kind of covered the majority of it. Yeah, I don't think I have that much to add about this. I think it's hard, and everyone kind of has to give themselves grace and pace themselves and recognize that, like, I don't think a lot of people talk enough about how long it does take for compersion to like kind of seep in, and removing all of the boogeymen from the conversation, whether that's like meeting that person or trying to sit down with the fears that pop up for you. Those all kind of play a part, and that takes some vulnerability and courage all at the same time, which is what vulnerability is. And you have to just kind of have to face it sometimes, and it's not easy. And so I want to validate the fact that this is difficult. I also want to validate the fact that, we grew up in a culture that tells us that if you're doing this, there's something wrong. So even if you are like cognitively, like, I see all this stuff and I'm aligning with it and I believe in it and it aligns with my values, we're not on an island, and we're also kind of overcoming social constructs.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that you said that. And it actually made me think of the fact that, like, there is the flip side of this of, hey, I'm somebody who feels tons of compersion and people think I'm crazy, right? Like, so even if you are showing up in that way, people are like looking at you like, what do you mean you're excited for that? Or you're happy that your partner just went and did this crazy thing or whatever it is. So like, even on that side, people catch a lot of shame and flack for showing up in that way. And it's almost like you can't win with this sometimes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is true.
Yeah. It's funny how there can be like an orthodoxy in different communities. Like in the mainstreams, like we have mononormativity, which says that monogamy is the only real valid way to love. And if you're showing up with compersion, you'll be treated as a total weirdo or pathological kind of person.
Mm-hmm.
And in certain non-monogamous communities, like there's a little bit of more like this idea that if you're not experiencing compersion, then you're doing it wrong there.
Yeah.
So it's important to just really have your own back as you're navigating different social settings and know that, you can be a proud weirdo, or you can just consider that everyone is normal in their own way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're all weirdos in our own way.
So you're not alone. There you go. That's the moral of the story, is you're not alone.
Yeah. Well, and I know we've gone longer than we normally go, but I had maybe a question for each of you too on this, because I'm curious. Meshai, you had mentioned earlier that compersion, you said you're not necessarily like a super compersion-y person.
Yeah.
I'm curious for you, like, having navigated non-monogamy for the last 5 or so years, how have you moved through that sort of without that being like, built into the framework of who you are? It sounds like you've had to work at it, just like a lot of the people we talked to today.
Yeah. I think it's an ongoing process for me. And I love the fact that, Marie, you've talked about it being a practice. And so for me, it's a practice of gratitude, being really grateful that someone's able to do something else for the people that I'm connected to or love, or that, I don't have to carry all of the weight of another person. Like, I'm really grateful for that, because then I get to focus on community and not just like, how do I be self-sufficient and supportive at the same time? So when I focus on gratitude and community, for me, that is what compersion is, or at least that's the practice I've leaned into. And so although I will probably not be the person that's like, I'm enthusiastically excited for you to do this, I can be deeply grateful that you have lots of people around you that love you and think that you're amazing. And that's also a value of mine. And that makes it easier. So like, also having what you were talking about with all the 3 different parts of compersion along with your values, I think makes compersion an easier, and it's not, I don't know about easier, but it definitely makes it like something I can sit in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. I appreciate it. And I'm curious, similar for you, Marie, I know your relationship structure is not necessarily non-monogamous, but what is sort of your experience like personally with compersion been? Do you find yourself somebody who's like, I find it pretty easy, or do you have to like work through this in the same way that we're sort of seeing in a lot of these questions?
I've had to work at it a lot too. I mean, I've had non-monogamous relationships in the past where I had to work at it, but then also right now that I'm not dating anyone else, my partner is not dating anyone else, I feel like my work is a lot in my friendships. And I've had a lot of circumstances lately of just noticing certain competitive dynamics emerging in some friendships where I had to really look at myself and what was triggering that kind of jealousy or feeling of separation, and having to kind of reckon with my own values around compersion and around like, how do I fill my own cup as well? Like, so that I don't have to feel like this person is an enemy because they are getting something that I want. So, gosh, like, for example, it's funny, like I have a good friend who is very, very successful professionally. And I have had this kind of really close friendship with her, but sometimes I'll catch myself, like thinking negative thoughts about her because I find, her to be so kind of wildly successful in a way that I'm not. And I've had to just really own my path. And I think like trust my path and trust the parts of my life where I feel like I've chosen my life, and I can look at someone else having something that I think I want, but like first, how do I create more of that for myself? But also, how do I just really claim who I am and not make someone else the star of my show? Because I think oftentimes, like when we're jealous or envious, we make someone else the star of our show. We focus on this other person as having it all, or having this easy life, or having these benefits that they don't deserve, or we make a lot of narratives about that. But when we kind of refocus on ourselves and be like, oh, how do I really create the life that I want and the passion that I want and all of that, it can kind of reframe all of this. Yeah,
I love that. And it resonated big. I think like that. I would just say for myself, when I'm in a place of like feeling good about who I am, it comes so much easier, like whether it's relationships or work, right? But if I'm like having a crappy work week and then somebody else is like, oh, I just sold a record number of things on my website, and I'm like, must add this to my like, and then I have like this new long list of all these things that I should do to be like this other person. And I'm like, wait a minute. I don't even want to sell things on my web. That was never even what I was here to do. Yeah. And yet now I feel like I should be because somebody else was super successful at it. Like, but what do I actually want? What am I actually building?
Oh my God. Yes, I hear you. Like in the world of entrepreneurship, it's so easy to compare. I actually was chatting with another good friend of mine the other day who's starting 5 different companies at the same time and is being so successful and on fire. Like, when someone is just like in their flow and they're successful and things are working out for them. And I caught myself like feeling really small and thinking like, gosh, I only have one business and I'm struggling. And just the narratives of comparison started flooding me and started actually making me feel uncomfortable in this friendly conversation that I was having with my friend. And so again, like I had to just kind of get back to my center and be like, no, I'm on my mission. He's on his.
Yeah.
It's all okay. I'm doing something that I love.
I think comparison is so easy to catch. And, like it kind of goes hand in hand with competition and like, how do you measure yourself? How do you know if you're doing good enough? I mean, I can be really stubborn. Like there's days that I don't want to admit that I'm comparing. Like, like
Yeah.
I know cognitively, like all the things I should not be doing, but like emotionally that tug towards comparison, like happens in a blink of an eye.
Yeah.
Because you just want to say like, am I doing well? And so it's just a hard thing to try to dodge all the time. So if you find yourself in the comparison trap, number one, it's really normal. And number two, giving yourself grace and knowing that like, I love what you said. Like, is this even something I want to do? Is this even like a path I want to take on? And a lot of times the answer is like, not really. You just feel like there should be something.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Do I want to work 5 simultaneous jobs? No, not really. but it's so easy in that moment to be like, well, I only have one company. This person has 5. Like I'm only 20% is good, right? Or I'm 80% failure, whatever way you want to run the numbers, right? It's so hard.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
It's crazy how easily it maps to relationships. I mean, because in many ways, right, it is a relationship. Your friendship with this person, it is a relationship, and they have their little metamor companies, and right, like there's so many things. Yeah. So
yeah, exactly. Everything is about relationship.
Yeah, I don't know. I know I use weird analogies at times and metaphors and all of that. And I appreciate you being here today, Marie. And I'm not excluding Meshai. Meshai actually had to jump right a moment ago as we were recording. One of her clients came in early. So Marie and I are taking it home today. So I don't know, Marie, are there any final thoughts you have on compersion or relationships or life that you want to share with the world? I know you and I get to hang out at least monthly and talk over a meal and a beer and wax about life. And I'm curious if you have anything you want to leave people with today.
Wow. I mean, we could definitely talk about this for another hour at least, forever. So I'll just leave people with another encouragement to find community around this, talk to people, because oftentimes the struggle around compersion feels very shameful and it feels isolating. So the more people you talk with, the more you'll feel a little bit more normal and, like not alone. And that can help just give you some more ease around your non-monogamous journey and your life journey in general. So again, just plugging in Fin and Emma's community, Normalizing Non-Monogamy. It's a really great virtual community. And, if you want that closer support, plugging in coaching and therapy. I'm a relationship coach, so I'm available for people who want that extra support and really getting into your context, your story. I do free 30 minutes exploratory sessions, so there's no, harm in just booking one of those and talking to me. And I know that Meshai is also a therapist, so definitely check out her work with Expansive Connection.
Yeah, totally. I think that's spot on. Yeah, get community around you and get some support, and right, not because you're broken, not because you're doing it wrong, but because this shit can be hard. And I mean, I think that was the takeaway when I was asking both you and Meshai. Like, nobody was just like, oh yeah, it's super easy, I just do it, and it's like, it's actually hard to not have compersion, I have so much of it, right? Like, that's not your typical person. Not that it doesn't happen, but that's not necessarily typical. And so if you need help or if you need support, you're not doing it wrong. Yeah. The other thing I just wanted to say too is like one thing that I think can be really helpful in these situations is to like really talk vulnerably with the people that you're in I'm going to say relationship, like generally speaking, right? And I think even like from the business side, I can see a world where you're able to share with somebody, hey, I'm so happy for you that you've got 5 companies, but like, that hit me. Like I felt this, I felt, insecure. I felt like right. And there's not 100% chance, but I think there's a good chance that person comes back and is like, Marie, I look at the business you're building and like, I'm blown away by it. And I can't, like, I compare myself to you all day, every day. Right. And so I think the realization that we're not going through these things alone, right? And when you can share with somebody what you're struggling with, again, not in a way that's like, how could you possibly start 5 companies? But like, well, I felt this way. And like, I think it's amazing what you're doing. That's an opening for them to be like, I think you're amazing, and it's intimidating as hell that you can be successful with 1 company. I need 5, like, and so whatever it is, I think giving people that encouragement to talk with the people you're in relationships with about what's going on for you, because you'll probably learn that they're feeling something too, even if it's not exactly the same thing as you.
Oh, yeah. It gives us the permission to be ourselves when we can get vulnerable like that. And it gives other people permission. Yeah. Which is a big gift.
Indeed. Yeah. Well, thank you again, Marie, for taking a chunk of your Friday to talk to us about compersion. And for anybody listening, please go grab a copy of Marie's book. There are links in the podcast show notes, along with a 25% off code to save yourself a little money, and links to Marie's coaching and where you can find out more about that, as well as Meshai's coaching and all of Meshai's work. So there are lots of good things in the show notes. Please check those out on our website. Under the podcast tab, you'll see all of the information there. And I suppose with that, we can say have a wonderful weekend, everybody.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, and have a great weekend, everyone. Thank you for joining us.
Yes. Take care, Marie, and we will see you somewhere around the Bay Area.
Yeah, we'll see you soon.
Bye.
Bye.